This is Pobal Maps, a gateway for sharing data and working smarter. So just briefly, many of you may not know who we are. So Pobal, we're a not-for-profit company working with government on community development and social inclusion issues. We were set up 20 years ago as area development management, and we've been expanding quite a bit in the years since then. We work with various government departments and the EU to deliver a range of programmes aimed at disadvantaged target groups like the unemployed, people with disabilities. Our largest programmes would be the childcare programme, the local community development programme, we run on rural transport, various equality programmes. There's a peace programme in the north, which is about reconciliation and so on as well. So what is Pobal Maps? Well, it's a free resource on our website, open to all. It has many different functions for various different programmes. The first one would be boundaries. We have a programme called the RAPID programme, which is about specific disadvantaged urban centres, and you have to know whether you're in or out of that, so that's handy. Mapping of our own services. We have close to 5,000 services mapped as dots on it. And it's also a map viewer for the Pobal Deprivation Index, which we'll come back to in a second. It also has a very handy reporting tool, which I think Andy looked at a bit earlier. We'll have a look at that too. This is a simple boundary on it for the RAPID programme. So this is Dublin North Inner City, and split into North East Inner City and North West Inner City. So you would layer the OSI map on top of this, and then you can very easily see which section you're in and if you're eligible within it. Service information. So this image shows one programme, which is the Community Services programme, and I've selected Roscommon here, and the green dots show all the projects in Roscommon. So I've identified one point here, and the information comes up on the left-hand side, which is Ross FM Community Radio. So it's a requirement for many of our groups that they use the deprivation index in their planning. So it has information on a number of socio-economic headings such as employment, education, and these are collated from various censuses. Using this information, a score is calculated for each small area, and that's calculated against the national average. So you would then measure this relatively. So a score of -35 would be very disadvantaged, and +35 would be very affluent. So the raw data is on the website as spreadsheets, and then Pobal Maps is the viewer for that data, basically. So this is an example of a small area. The colour coding shows blue as being highly affluent, and the redder it gets being more disadvantaged. So you can see I've selected an area here which is point identified, and you'll see on the left hand side you have the data for that area. So the population change is down 2%, age dependency ratio, which is persons under 16 or over 65, is at 30% odd, lone parent ratio 73. Primary education only is 46%, third level 3.5. The unemployment rate amongst men is 56%, and amongst women 34%. And the score for this area then, using all that data to calculate it, is -22, which we would classify as very disadvantaged. So what are small areas? Well, it's the smallest unit that we can use to measure this disadvantage. Previously to this, it was electoral divisions, which were too inconsistent in population size. You had a range of just 70 persons in one ED, up to 32,000 in another. So if you're comparing those two, you can see there's obviously going to be problems. So in 2008, our index adopted the new small area data. So these are much more consistent. It's an average of just 90 households in each small area. So it's now possible to isolate smaller pockets of disadvantage much more accurately. Well, it started with our rural transport programme. They had a monitoring requirement for their bus routes rurally to digitise their routes on a map. And from this evolved Pobal Maps. Basically, it was kind of seen as a handy tool for plotting where our services were. The reporting function then, it saves us a lot of time with client services and stuff like that, because people can run their own reports on their own data. Those reasons are pretty good, I think, for having a GIS system, but the main reason we find is the small area data we just looked at, because as Omar was saying earlier, if you're looking at lines and lines, there's 18,000 small areas in the country of data, it's pretty meaningless unless you can map it. They're coded in the first place, so you couldn't even tell where they were. So this is just an example of a report. I think Andy brought one up earlier, and this would be where the slider tool we were talking about would be really handy. This is a list of EDs in Dublin City. And you have populations, you have the deprivation score I mentioned, and then you'll have employment rates and so on. So you can compare here between 2006 and 2011, the last two censuses. So obviously that's very important in Ireland, considering what happened in the country between that range of time. So you can see how bad things have got, basically. what this means for ourselves, our funded groups, the general public. Well, the system is used widely, not just by ourselves to appraise and by our beneficiaries to plan, and they have to use it to show that they're targeting disadvantage. But I mean, we get a lot of calls from students who are using it in their college research, other state agencies who use it, charities. We had the Simon community in Cork were on last week, who they wanted to use it and they thought it was great just to look at the most disadvantaged pockets of the city. For larger programs that we have, like our childcare program where there's over 4,000 projects, it's important for information sharing and seeing where all the services are scattered around. Probably most strongly, it provides very reliable deprivation data, now accurate up to 2011, for our funded projects so that they can plan effectively. For us, it's one of the main ways we appraise and monitor our projects to make sure that they are spending the money in the areas that need it the most. And nationally as well, it's important to show government, from our own perspective, that their money is being spent wisely. That's it. Thank you.